So this is week 64 of our weekly discussions. We've come a long way, and I'm JD Bauman. This week, we're going to talk about tensions between effective altruism and Christianity. Real quick, what is EA? EA is two things. It's an idea, and it's a community based off that idea, focused on using evidence and careful reasoning to find the very best ways to improve the world, and then to act on that basis. In practice, EA involves several concrete things, I would say. The first is getting together and discussing what it would mean to use our limited resources, our treasure, our time, and our talent to do good in the world. And what a lot of EAs come to is that one of the best ways to do good in the world is to donate to effective charities. We know through some charity evaluators that it only costs a couple $1,000s to reliably save a life in a low-income country through a highly effective means like using insecticide-treated malaria nets or something else. So donating money can be extremely effective, and a lot of EAs try to maximize, among other things, the amount of money they donate to effective charities and to find the best charities to donate to. Another thing that a lot of EAs are concerned about is using their time and their talents, especially in the form of their career, to do good. We know of 80,000 hours, this group that talks about how we have 80,000 hours in our career. And if we could just improve our career effectiveness by like 1%, it'd be worth spending 800 hours to do that. So a lot of EAs spend time discussing career effectiveness and how they can use their career to do more social good. So with this idea of EA in mind, I want to talk real quickly about some synergies, why Christians are excited about EA, before digging in deeper into some tensions where EAs or where the EA philosophy and movement and where in practice EA might come clashing with Christianity or with Christian groups today, before moving on to some discussion questions. So the first big synergy I just want to touch on is just this idea, this emphasis in EA about expanding our moral circle. EAs are really concerned about impartiality, about helping people not because we owe them a special favor because they're our friend, or like a you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of thing, but really giving and serving people who we have no attachment to, people who can do nothing for us, but we serve them because we think it's good. And I see this idea in Christianity. We read that for God so loved the whole world. And this idea of expanding the moral circle is present even in the New Testament, where Paul writes about how all are one in Jesus Christ. And we even pray for our enemies. We try to forgive those who persecute us. So I see that as one synergy. Another synergy is this element of moral demandingness in effective altruism. This idea that it's not enough to just do good. It's not enough to just donate to charity or to pursue a good career. EAs really want to pursue the best career, to give as much money away as possible, to give to the most effective causes. And we have this demandingness in the New Testament, where we see Jesus talking about how the call to biblical stewardship is demanding and intense. I mean, Jesus says whoever wants to follow him has to lay down their life, and whoever lays down their life to follow Jesus will find it. And we even have these ideas, these I would say hyperboles in Scripture, like in the Beatitudes, where Jesus says, if your eye causes you to sin, you should tear it out. There's this idea that throughout Scripture that moral rules and moral obligations are just extreme, and it's very demanding to follow them. And so perfect service is an impossible task. So I think we all come to that point in our life where we realize we haven't lived up to our standards. We've sinned, we've messed up, and we need some kind of rescue. And in Christianity, our rescue is Jesus Christ. And Christianity affirms that there is grace for all, and even though we fail, there's dignity and worth in each person. So I just want to touch on these synergies before I dig deeper into the tensions. I don't want you to just come away with this talk with all the tensions about EA and Christianity. So one big tension that comes up is the fact that in the broader EA movement, which spans many different countries, many tens of thousands of people, many effective altruists are utilitarian in terms of their ethics. A lot of them are trying to maximize maximize the amount of utility, whatever that is for them, whether that's pleasure or other kind of welfare. And a lot of them are secular as well. So a common example of a well-known effective altruist is Peter Singer, who is in Christian circles pretty notorious for his views on the unborn, for his views on animals. And I knew about Peter Singer long before I knew about effective altruism, and I always thought, oh, stay away, stay away. So there are a lot of well-known figures within the EA movement, not just Peter Singer, but also Will McCaskill, Nick Bostrom, who are not Christian, and who may at times even make somewhat anti-Christian remarks. I can say that at least for Peter Singer, he's not a huge fan of the church. So I think it's only natural to see some tension here, and not just to brush it off and say, oh, Peter Singer's just one guy, but kind of ask, what is it about Peter Singer and what is it about effective altruism that match? And is there something there that actually is in tension with Christianity? Perhaps utilitarianism is in tension. At least some forms of utilitarianism would be incompatible with Christianity. So that's something we could discuss more. Another tension between EA and Christianity is potentially EA's focus on quote unquote effective charities. And EAs or people in effective altruism typically mean something a bit more specific than just a charity that does good. A lot of EAs give to charities that are recommended by specific charity evaluators. So this isn't like a rule in effective altruism, but in practice, a lot of EAs give to a charity recommended by GiveWell or animal charity evaluators or Founders Pledge or Giving What We Can or OpenPhil or EA Funds. And these charities that are recommended are by and large not Christian charities, at least not in the immediate sense that you think of when you think of Christian charity, like with a Christian mission statement or is explicitly Christian in its on its website or so forth. These charities are also not local churches. And when we look in the US, where I'm based, and we look at how Christians give by and large to Christian charities and churches. In fact, most giving in the US is Christian giving, in the sense that I meant before, giving to an org that does have some explicit Christian mission or language referring to Christianity. I think you can take a nuanced look at this by asking more deeply, what does it mean to be a Christian charity? And if you broaden your definition to charities that are run by Christians, charities that have mission statements that are aligned with doing good in the world and taking care of the poor and widows, then yes, many EA charities are Christian. But in the more narrow sense, almost all, I would say almost all EA recommended charities by these recommenders are not Christian. So many Christians take issue with this, and given that EA is largely about effective donations, though not entirely, but largely, this is a tension. So a third tension is that EAs tend to focus potentially too much on the head or thinking or just being really rational and calculating. Here's the EA logo. We've got a light bulb and a heart. And the idea is we're combining the heart and the mind. We're doing good, not just with our hearts, not just for some warm glow, but in a way that we know actually does do the most good, it actually is effective, and so forth. But some would argue that there's too much focus on the head. Maybe a Christian critique might look at something like 1 Corinthians 13, which I actually heard at church this morning. It was preached about. And I remember Paul's words that if I give my body off to be burned, but have not love, then I do it for nothing. And we see examples in Scripture, this focus on the not just the outcomes of our actions, but really the intentions of our heart. And there's perhaps a risk here that if we focus on outcomes, we neglect what God cares, some would say, most about, which is delivering our hearts to the Lord. And maybe there's this idea that if we just encourage people to give with their heads, this might actually just kill the heart of giving. People might not want to give. And so I've heard some EAs say that maybe effective altruism isn't, it's not receptive to everybody because not everybody's made to think in an optimizing way. And maybe that's just how God made them. But maybe there is a tension here. I'd love to talk more about it. And then, this idea that if EA demotivates people, then maybe EA isn't very effective, which is something I've read about. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that in a moment. As a final tension, I want to talk about Jesus, the person of Jesus, as we find in Scripture. I also want to talk about Scripture more broadly. Was Jesus an effective altruist? Is the Bible pro effective altruism? Are the causes that effective altruists care about not just poverty and global health, but also animal welfare and preventing existential risks and other sorts of things? Are these causes that are aligned with a worldview that puts stock in the Bible's teachings? And we've written some blogs about this. We've had many in our community who are much more intelligent than myself, who've written some very nuanced takes on this. And perhaps somebody could post some comments in the chat with links to those articles, or at least to our blog. But this is something that I think deserves more discussion. Some would say that if, the way that we think about effectiveness today was not the way that Jesus acted. And we don't see the Bible telling people to do randomized controlled trials. Of course, that would sound kind of silly, but many EAs today might wish that the Bible had said more EA-like things. So is that true? Is the Bible in some way not effective altruist? Of course, EA is a 21st century modern movement. But is it grounded in the timeless teachings of Jesus Christ? At least, is it compatible with the timeless teachings of Jesus Christ? So with that, I'd love to move on to some questions, and I can post these in the chat, but I'd love to hear, what do you think are the greatest tensions between EA and Christianity? And if possible, please try to be specific. Don't just say, oh yeah, Peter Singer, I don't like that guy, he's an effective altruist. But say exactly what it is about someone like Peter Singer being in the EA movement and what that might say specifically about EA and specifically about Christianity that is incompatible. Maybe it's a way of seeing the world, or maybe it's a specific kind of ethic. I'd love also to talk about if there's specific Bible passages that you find most support or clash with EA. So some common examples I hear of are like the alabaster jar example, or the shrewd Samaritan. And then feel free to talk about anything else. These questions are kind of like icebreakers for you and your group. So if you don't know how to start the breakout room, then just start out with these